Hi, this is Kara. Welcome to Breaking Free Fridays, or welcome back if you've been following the series. It's really great to have you here. So today I felt inspired to talk about how to befriend change. Like, what are the keys to befriending change? And one of the reasons that I think this came up is, change is one of those things that is absolutely inevitable, and it is the one constant in our lives. As humans, we often have an aversion to change because it gets us into the realm of the unknown. And our wiring, just primally speaking, biologically speaking, can get us into a place of fear when we're dealing with unknown. So it's one of those things that feels a bit of a chicken and an egg situation. And it's a huge opportunity for us doing inner work and really embracing new levels of empowerment and new levels of breaking free. One of the things, you've probably heard this quote, it's really famous and it's such a good one, so it bears saying again, but it's the idea that doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, is a definition of insanity, right? And yet sometimes we find ourselves stuck in that loop. And oftentimes it's out of a fear or resistance to change. And we can either embrace change and actually be proactive in designing our lives and really, going for that next level, whatever that looks like for each of us. Or we can resist it and hold back, and inevitably we'll be faced with it and we'll be forced to do something. So either one is a choice. It's just, one is more active and the other one is passive and puts us in more of a victim mode, right? So another piece that I wanted to share related to change is this concept. There's a psychologist and a famous author named Gay Hendricks. And one of his recent books, it's called The Big Leap. It talks about this really interesting concept that is around the upper limit. And one of the things that happens for us when we are evaluating change, or, we want to go to a next level, our old limiting beliefs, and often these are subconscious, they come from deep-seated stories and things that we've actually taken on as a level of conditioning innocently when we're kids, when different experiences happen in our lives. And what happens is we end up having, basically it's like this thermostat of what's considered almost like a comfort zone, right? There's a range that our system, our mind, deems safe. That, if we don't go above, this part of it or go below this, we're in a safe spot. Well, if we're in a process of, really seeking growth and transformation that's required to bring ourselves to a next level of our lives, to experience that fullness and our greatest potential, that means we're going to be bumping up against that top level of the thermostat a lot. And what we end up finding is that if we go above, sometimes that's what we deem as self-sabotage, where, things will happen and we kind of, we fall back, into that comfort zone. Or if we get too low, we might have something that kind of pushes us above, to get back into that comfort zone. If you think about this comfort zone or this, area of thermostat, it is also a piece that can explain, in part, not entirely, there's other factors, of course, but in part why certain people end up stuck in really bad dynamics, really unhealthy and terrible situations, because this comfort zone, it can actually be connected to things that we're just familiar with. It's almost by definition, it's not necessarily comfort as in it feels good, but it's something we're familiar with. So if you think about, abusive dynamics or things like that, people can get looped into that cycle where it's familiar, and the unknown, that presents something that seems more scary. I mean, there's a lot of other factors at play as well, but just a piece to look at that's really interesting. So sometimes thinking about, okay, that 10 seconds of courage, right, to go through to the other side of that comfort zone, it's almost another area of thinking about, when you're dealing with anxiety or worries. One of the things that is most challenging with really getting to another place and freeing yourself from anxiety and worries, if we just keep feeding them. And so the more we allow ourselves, and even if it's baby steps, to really take that next leap, that next step, to have that 10 seconds of courage. Every time we do that, we're rewiring our brain for becoming more and more comfortable with embracing change and realizing that change does not inherently mean something unsafe. So that's kind of the bugaboo, is we're retraining that primal system in our brains that says, and flags anything that seems out of the ordinary or possibly tracks back to some, experience that was really challenging or difficult. And it just is like danger, 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 but it often alerts, and that is reinforced when we are operating in dysregulated nervous systems. So a few things to remember when you're trying to break free of that comfort zone, so that you can keep up leveling, you can keep breaking through, you can keep breaking free, you can keep gaining increased levels of empowerment. In addition to that, like 10 seconds of courage, another big piece, and I talk about this quite frequently in my videos because it's so important, and it has to do with feeling. It has to do with regulating your nervous system, allowing that energy to move through your body instead of getting stuck, because that stuck energy, it creates a chaos, it creates maladaptation in all sorts of ways, every different area of systems and functioning of our being. And of course, areas where we can be more mindful, in like meditative practices, where we're clearing, where we're allowing that space and that calmness. Connecting to nature is another big one. And really allowing ourselves to dream. We often get shut off from this as we go through life. And, it's usually from a place of innocence and trying to protect us, keeping us in a place of what's realistic, what's practical, what's logical. But the thing is, when we do, oh my goodness, there is a hawk that just flew by. I love that. I have to share it. It's all about higher perspective, right? Which is another important piece as we are really moving through change, right? Oh my gosh, higher perspective every time. How is life actually unfolding for our betterment? Oftentimes we default to this perspective of, oh, what is this other shoe that's dropping? When we think of change. And so that's something that we can keep playing with and bringing ourselves into a different pattern of thinking around. Super game changing. And where was I before the hawk flew by? Grounding, really connecting to nature. Another piece is be curious. Be really curious from a place of childlike wonder. So the key is exploring, what stories do you have around things? And how are they maybe looping in a limiting belief in your life now? And these can be things that came when you're a young child, and just innocent beliefs that are formed out of different experiences, or judgments that you hear family members making about other family members or other people in society. And we can latch onto those, and instead of keeping a really open mind and positioning for all sorts of different experiences, it can really narrow us into an area. And sometimes those become resistance points in moving through and past those areas of comfort zone, or getting beyond that upper limit problem, as Gay Hendricks talks about in The Big Leap, which is a really fascinating book, by the way. I highly recommend it. It's pretty short, and it's a great read. And then I was talking before about dreams, and I want to bring that back up, because we get conditioned to almost deflate that, oh, it's not realistic, so why even go there? And oftentimes this is a representation of how we fight for our limitations, and it becomes an automatic pattern. We don't even realize we're doing it. The first step is becoming aware. So I encourage you to really start noticing, how you're framing things, how you're talking about things in context of this. Also, when people are, making comments about things that are really complimentary to you, do you receive those compliments with grace and joy, or do you deflect it? Because our deflecting of it is actually really inhibits our receiving. It inhibits the flow of abundance and that movement forward that we're really pursuing in this work, in our inner work. So I would love to hear what's unfolding for you, what's resonating as you're watching this. And if you are enjoying this, please share it with family and friends, subscribe, send a like, and I hope you have a fabulous week. Here is to your next level of empowerment, breaking free, and making that move to that next level in your life, to going beyond that comfort zone and going through that upper limit, so that you keep up leveling and experiencing the next best and beautiful part of your life. So I'm so celebrating you, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.